What happens when your team's stuck?
Make sure that it's not an exercise where you produce 10 slides, show it to the teams and expect them to respond constructively to it.
I would say you need to start to take responsibility. That's my take on this. Welcome to our first episode of the 10-Minute Product Podcast in video. So what we wanted to chat about today is what happens when your team's stuck. So your team is stuck and you're out of ideas and something doesn't work. And so you think, well, how can we get out of this? But mostly, I would say you need to start to take responsibility. That's my take on this. As you know, it starts with leadership. You can't blame your team. Basically, it starts with you setting up the right framework, in my opinion. What do you think?
No, I completely agree, Christian. Most of the products from time to time get stuck, and so does teams, and in fact, so does leadership as well. So obviously, unless you want your product to continue as is, let's say that you're making 10 million in recurring monthly revenue, and you're kind of happy with that, please skip on and move on to the next episode of this podcast series. But in many cases, you want to unstuck your product development, unstuck your team, and re-inspire the team to come up with some brilliant feature ideas. And this is exactly what this episode is about, right, Christian? We will talk through some of our experience within this space, and also attempt to bring some practical pointers that are
Yep.
hopefully useful for you.
Exactly. But I think the first thing, actually, because you said it's about getting progress, the first thing I find many companies and many teams I worked with and myself are battling with is complete honesty. I think you need to start with the transparency, because you can't fix things if you don't actually recognize them. Do you have a growth slowdown? Are the numbers not great? Do you have an elusive product market fit? You don't understand why things don't catch on. You have a lot of churn. You're bleeding users. I think it starts with basically being in an environment in which you can be honest with yourself and bring these things up. Otherwise, nobody will point at the problems. So that's my first thing.
It's also to look at outside conditions. Is the reason for the slowdown, your product performance being stuck? Is that because the user pains or the market conditions have changed, that your product is less relevant? It's not solving that particular pain in the same way it did before.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your competition? It could be direct, it could be indirect. We're in fast-moving space.
Yeah.
Are they tapping into your demand? Are they cannibalizing on your market share? Is that the reason? What do we need to do as a counter? And also, is there generally in the market, are there any market slowdown? Is your target customer less likely to pay for your service or product because there's simply less money in the pockets of your customers?
Like last year, right? 2023 was not great.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. That's kind of a key example. So look at the outside conditions first. You may find a clue. Often you will find some clue, but also look at the inside conditions.
Inside conditions, I have a few that are on my list that I always do as a homework, which is technical quality, super underestimated. I find the bigger the organization, the less people are aware. The higher up they are, the further they're remote, and the less they are aware of the quality. The apps are slow. Login takes time and bleeds users because the sign up doesn't work well. A lot of examples, basically. And I think also the metrics and reporting, I found that it's important to put the metrics in. And when you start digging, the metrics often are a bit sketchy. So, like 20% of the traffic has been forgotten because it's on some other device and the dashboard was rigged to do, only mobile, for example, and then didn't do some kind of web, or you have something on a smart TV and you have some traffic that's missing. So metrics and reporting framework is the same. And I say these things, it sounds, amazingly obvious, but it does happen over and over.
Yes, then there's the real world, and the real world starts with your team. Obviously, as you turn around, you've done completed your analysis, and so reinvigorate, do an extra effort to invigorate your team. That means go back into the field, send them out and join them to do user research and investigation. There's nothing like that kind of sparks,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even listening to the same pains and problems users have had all along your product's life cycle, but getting them back out there in front of users is usually a very good place to start, and brings everybody together in a mutual and shared understanding of what you're solving for with your products. And then figure out if, together with your team, obviously, if there's a strategy that you need to refine, you need to change. Make sure that it's not an exercise where you, as a leader, produce 10 slides, show it to the teams, and expect them to respond constructively to it. They need to be part of defining the new strategy. And another thing that I know we both tried, Christian, is around design sprints. So conduct quick exercises that re-sparks the team, put in stretch both timelines and objectives.
Yeah.
And because there's nothing like overstretching on the goals and trying to achieve that as a team, that brings them together, sparks creativity, sparks them to question everything around them.
Yeah, I find the discovery is one of those where you can cut a lot of time. And I think the natural instinct of teams is to go and build stuff, even if it's very small. I think you can always do smaller. You can do a few mocks, a few clickable prototype. You can do real progress in very, very short bursts for discovery, I think. And that's one of those things that is key. Interestingly, there's also a series of ideas that usually pop up out of the, I call it the pile of dead features. Basically, every team has the 3 to 6 to 700 features in a board somewhere. Whether you're in product board, Jira, product pad, Monday, whatever it is that you're using. The 3 to 5 to 6, whatever hundreds of tickets have been there for years. They are, hanging like a sword over the team because, it's basically, we're never going to get around with it anyway, la la la. It's very negative, but there's great ideas in there from 2 years ago. So one of those really important things is to keep reviewing and rinsing, I think, this backlog and get it up to date, and to say, okay, park, but then there's one nugget and keep it, and work with that. Basically, that's my one addition to that. But this brings me to another. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to add that it brings me to some of the key moments in my work life has been where I got like a notebook that's fairly large that I brought with me in the last 15 years, from role to role across products, different products. I always use that to note down ideas, reflections, and sometimes you can. What I've done is I've encouraged the team, while bringing my notebook myself, to bring their notebooks and say, from other roles, from other times, bring them into play, have a review of what's in there, similar to the backlog, because often you find some nuggets there you can kind of bring into your current context, and you could become inspired from. And I've certainly experienced that. So I love your idea around doing some backlog grooming, which is very effective, I would say.
And I think I'll add as well that I think on this topic of having a process for reviewing all the old stuff as well. You need to change your processes as a leader, and so clearly the situation of unblocking and of going forward is different than business as usual. So I think you probably benefit as a leader from a bit of self-reflection on how do you communicate, what can you do differently. Are you clear and directional enough to the team so that they know what the priorities are and what is expected from them? I find teams a bit timid sometimes in terms of, you tell them, go experiment, but that's too vague. So you need to get involved and figure out in which direction they should go. What is the environment? We mentioned this, you need an environment where people can say things, that something's wrong. You need to create a safe environment, a trust, a feedback culture. And I think I'll add also, to get away this negative feeling of always being behind. And that's a very common thing. 400 features we haven't built yet. We're behind. The product market fit doesn't work well. We're behind. I think it's important to say, let's grab the opportunities. Let's figure out how to make it better, and that the team looks at this in a more positive thing. I think this is a very people-oriented matter. Yeah, very close to my heart, I think.
Speaking of people, also consider whether you have the right people in the right roles. This is not just talents, but it's also experience. If you have a junior or mid-weight member of your team in a leadership position, direct or indirect, consider whether that person needs support or whether that person is right for the role, and across the team as well. Obviously, the people mix, the talent mix, the experience mix, hugely important that to create the right dynamic, as we spoke about in our episode around high-performing teams.
Yeah, agreed.
And then finally, obviously the product itself, is the vision clear? Does the strategy tie into the vision? Are the metrics supporting the execution of the vision on the roadmaps? That has to be coherent. It has to make sense of the team. And back to the point we raised before, this can't be your own desktop exercise where you turn up 10 slides and then expect the team to execute. They have to be part of this. They have to feel co-ownership. From that point, you get more out of them, better results.
Agreed.
So I think, Chris. Yep. So Christian, we went through quite a large list, and hopefully this was useful for our listeners.
Yeah.
And anything you want to add as the final words here?
Just unblocking. It's important to react when you start to slow down or you start to get stuck. It's really important to react real quickly. Figure out how to move forward, basically. So yeah, I hope this was useful as a list. Send us feedback as usual. We're moving to the video format, so let us know. And we hope this was an interesting and useful episode. See you next time. Thank you.
See you next time, Christian.